So this happened yesterday, but I'm pretty sure it's the creepiest encounter with a stranger I've ever had in my life. I've never really written about a personal experience like this, and I don't know if you will find it as weird as I did, or if maybe I'm overreacting. Yesterday, my friend and I were at my house and found ourselves craving gross fast food. I live about a half a mile from a Burger King which my friends and I had walked to before. It was quickly approaching dusk, but my neighborhood is relatively nice and I had never felt uncomfortable or unsafe walking anywhere nearby before. The weather has been mild around here for December, and we decided to walk instead of drive the short distance to the King. For some background information, my friend and I are both 16-year-old girls. We have both had encounters with creepers in the past, but my resting bitch face has deterred a lot of unwanted advances. My friend had a pepper spray canister in her purse, but we left it at home. I guess because we were so comfortable in my neighborhood that we didn't think anything odd would happen. When we reached the Burger King, it was oddly desolate for dinner time. The only people in the restaurant were the workers, an old Italian man who seemed to be the franchise owner, and a middle-aged African man sitting in the corner, facing the window. The way the building is set up, you order your food around the corner from the seating area, and those at the cash register cannot easily see those seated in the restaurant. There is a side door that opens directly into the dining area, and you can enter and leave without whoever is working the cash register seeing you. As we were ordering our milkshakes and fries, the owner was screaming at the young employees, which made my friend and I pretty uncomfortable. When our food was ready, he brought it to the counter and leered at us, asking us if we had just been to the beach. Neither of us were dressed particularly provocatively, and I just gave him a dirty look and sat down to eat my food, thinking that he was probably the creepiest person I was going to meet that day. When my friend and I sat down to eat, the man who was seated in the corner got up to leave. We barely looked at him, and when he was passing our table, my friend and I noticed an odd detail. Though he was middle-aged and was wearing what looked to be a work uniform, he had bright, neon green contact lenses in his eyes, like the kind people wear with Halloween costumes. I giggled to my friend that he must really like Hobson, a rapper whose persona includes wearing white contact lenses, but we didn't find it too strange until he came back in the side door 3 minutes later. When he came back in, he was carrying a misshapen large bag. He was previously seated very far away from us, but when he came back in, he took the seat closest to us, only 2 or 3 feet away. The tables were angled differently, so his back was facing us. We thought this was weird, but we continued eating while he pulled out an ancient laptop from his bag and started it up. A few moments later, my friend grabbed my leg and made a motion for me to look next to me. There, the man had clearly angled his laptop screen so it was in the view of my friend and I. I heard his heavy breathing before I fully grasped what was happening. There on his Windows media player screen were 2 naked women in what seemed to be a dungeon, strapped down and being whipped by a third woman in a rubber suit. Now, I have grown up around computers, and I am friends with lots of dirty teenage boys, so I have seen pornography before. But this didn't seem like normal bondage porn at all. It seemed less staged and less professional, but the fact that the man had it on a disc instead of the internet made it pretty creepy. What made it even creepier was that he was steadily increasing the volume on his laptop. By the time my friend and I fully grasped what was happening and got up to leave, it was on full volume, and still angled towards us, while the woman's screams of pain echoed through the dingy restaurant. Of course, while this was happening, the manager was still yelling at his employees, and they were definitely unaware of what was going on. My friend and I didn't stop to tell them what was happening, but we booked it out of there, running across a busy intersection. I looked back to see the man getting up and walking out of the Burger King into what can only be described as a stereotypical black creeper van. I told my friend this and we began to panic and ran into a nearby gas station. The van drove onto the parking lot and sat there. We hid inside for almost half an hour, and the employees probably thought we were shoplifting, but we were too scared to make the walk home with this weirdo on the loose. Eventually, the van drove off, and we peeked outside to make sure the coast was clear. By this time, it was completely dark. I called my best friend and asked him to come pick us up, but he was across town. My friend and I just stayed on the phone with him as we began to journey back to my house. But the paranoia seemed endless. When we got home, we speculated on the man's intentions and thanked our lucky stars that he didn't grab us on our walk back. I wasn't able to sleep well last night. I just saw his blank green eyes and his creepy black van in my dreams. It really sucks not feeling safe in your own neighborhood. I think it was probably exciting for him to scare young girls, and I think maybe this was his form of exhibitionism.
Number 2.
I just remember this. It's one of those memories that isn't extremely terrifying enough to remember, but it's eerie enough to stay in your mind for a good while. I'd say I was about 13 years old when this happened. At the time, I lived in a small town, and this girl a few years younger than me had gone missing. It had been a big deal. They found her dead body, and well, she had apparently been tortured before her death. It was a huge deal. Obviously, it made parents paranoid about who they let around their children. So back to my experience. My mom took me to Burger King. It was close to our apartment, and we went there the days she was too tired from working to cook. She went to get the food, and I sat at a booth playing with the paper from my straw, and this man came in and came up to me. It was like he came into the building and looked around until he spotted me, then came over to where I was sitting. I don't think the guy was homeless. Maybe he was. He had this odd smell to him, and his clothes were ripped and dirty. He kept his hands stuffed in his jeans pockets and kept moving them around and swaying back and forth while standing and looking down at me, and he kept smiling. It was so creepy. I just sort of smiled at him and said hi, and hoped he'd go away, and figured he couldn't do anything because it was a small building full of employees, and my mom was just a few feet away. Note, my mom didn't notice the guy yet. He started talking to me, and I remember that he had the kind of voice that makes you feel gross. He just fucking stared at me, and was talking about the girl who went missing and was found dead. It wasn't like a casual topic. He had this glint in his eyes that it was exciting to him what had happened, and exciting for him to be talking about it to a young girl. He started on about how he heard that what happened to the girl was all about sex, which when you're very young and some creepy man who hasn't bathed in probably weeks is saying things about sex to you. And the way he said sex was so intense, it was just freaky. Like the whole situation is fucked, and I was creeped out and this guy was standing very close to me, like blocking my side of the booth. It was like he knew that if he didn't stand nearly pressed to my side, that I would get up and leave this charming conversation. Thankfully, before he could tell me any more about sex, my mom noticed him and came over asking him what the hell he wanted and why he was talking to me. He got wide-eyed, jumped away, and left. A few employees ran out after him to see who he was, what he looked like, because they were caught between wanting to call the cops and make sure to never let him into the building again. I remember being shaken up really badly. My mom was freaked out. She had plans on buying me mace and all sorts of things after that incident. The thing is that, after that, I was paranoid I'd run into him again. Small town, that shit happens. Like a few times I swear I saw him riding a bike when I'd be in the car with my mom. And another time, I think I saw him in a shop we were in. Of course, I was young. He was gross. And I was paranoid. So I doubt I did really see him. Anyway, gross guy from Burger King, let's not meet.